Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
To my black people, black Americans, foundational black Americans, ADOS, my Solani people, my black natives, my black American Indians, my freedmen, my slave babies, I said Solani, then who else we got? My Gullah Geechees, my Gullah people, free people, all my people that's emancipated on this land. Everything has worked out for us. Now there's other moves we can make now since we shook all these immigrants off our 14th Amendment. We shook them off. Let me read you what Trump said during this Supreme Court decision today. Giant win in the United States Supreme Court. Even the birthright citizenship hoax has been indirectly hit hard. It had to do with the babies of slaves same year, not the scamming of our immigration process. And he congratulated everyone. But listen, this is the greatest day, black Americans. This is the greatest day.
Brothers and sisters out there that are the ones that are posting all this, oh, we just gonna mind our business. And I saw somebody earlier making t-shirts of like a group of like 6 black people, black men and women sitting on a bench texting on phones while the country is burning up behind them. Let me explain something to you guys. Let me explain something to you. When they get done with the brown people,
let's just talk a little bit about what just happened on June 2023 on a Monday with the Supreme Court decision on emergency requests from the Trump administration. And then what happened in that same week on Friday with the birthright citizenship for all of those FBAs and ADOS out there that think that they can't be deported. Let's take a closer look at how that can possibly happen. Number one, whether people are aware of it or not, on Monday, the Supreme Court granted President Donald Trump emergency requests to resume deporting migrants to countries other than their homeland. And right now, I think there are about 9 of them that were illegal migrants here in the United States that got put into the South Sudan of Africa. Only one of the 9 is from the Sudan, by the way. Another one is from Central and South America, and some people are as far as places in Asia. With that being said, based on this emergency request, the Supreme Court offered no explanation. Does this mean that this will stand as lawsuits come in to challenge it? No, but it right now means they can continue to deport people to other countries other than their home.
Also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that, Steve, okay?
You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens, but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What, do you think there's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too. And I'm all for it, because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great job with that. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people.
Why do I say all of this, you ask? Well, on Monday, to make the decision to send immigrants to places they're not from, which again, there are at least 9 people over there now. Only one is from the Sudan. Some are from Central and South America, and others from as far as Asia. On Monday, when that decision was made, the Supreme Court gave no explanation. You want to understand why that's important. Lawyers use the explanations in order to interpret the Supreme Court's decision, in order to see if cases similarly aligned that can either be challenged or not challenged based on the interpretation. If you have no explanation, it's a wide open book. So Monday's decision is very, very important. Here's the other caveat to this. Did you all know, FBA, ADOS, and Black Americans, that at one point in time between 1806 and 1909, Black people were sent back to Africa. They were sent back to a place called Liberia, West Africa, off the coast. Why? One of the reasons they wanted to get rid of the free Black Americans, the newly freed Black Americans. They thought it would be a great idea. A lot of Black Americans were against it, and so were abolitionists. But the American Colonization Society, also known as ACS, thought it was a great idea. And James Monroe, the president for which the capital of Liberia was named after, Monrovia, Liberia, supported it, not only in his philosophy and beliefs, but he also supported it financially. So when you think about birthright citizenship being under the 14th Amendment, and you think about how the ACS between 1806 and 1909 were sending back thousands of Black Americans. Some of them were even gathered in a place called Liberia, North Carolina, and sent back to Liberia to establish a new colony and get rid of some of these Black Americans. At the same time, these free Black Americans, mind you, because you all are free, right? At the same time of that going on, from 1806 to 1909, guess what else was taking place? A great migration was taking place, and that migration was of Europeans coming to the America. It occurred between the same period of time they were sending Black free people over to Liberia, and the period is often referred to as the Great Atlantic Migration. Does that remind you of something that just happened recently? Sure, it should. We just sent over, not a busload yet, but he wrote in a different type of status for any white Afrikaner in South Africa that wants to come over here. So far, the initial amount has been roughly around 60 white South Africans, and this was based on them feeling as though they were being discriminated against. So at the same time, my point about this, that we're putting people over in Africa even though they're not born there, not from there. And at the same time that we're arguing the 14th Amendment, and at the same time that this is all going on, this happened before very similarly, nothing has to be exact, back in the 1800s. Get it? And for all of those ADOS and FBA saying, well, they can't do that to us now because that was under the 14th Amendment and the birthright citizenship was intended for us. Well, guess what else was intended for us under the 14th Amendment? The Civil Rights Act of 1868. But what did Edward Bloom's organization, that's the organization who led the charge, I believe it was in a couple of years back, that sued Harvard University and the University of North Carolina for reverse discrimination due to its standing with affirmative action. It actually took precedent and they reversed affirmative action at colleges and universities, okay, calling it reverse discrimination. Edward Bloom's organization used a law under the 14th Amendment that was initially intended for us, okay? A civil rights law of 1868. He argued that law, and that caused harm to our community because of affirmative action. But take this a step further. It also limits DEI in some cases, and this is what Donald Trump steps in to almost 2 years later after the Supreme Court decision to reverse affirmative action. Donald Trump in January reverses all DEI and rolls back Lyndon B. Johnson's executive order of 1965. He called it discriminatory. That him calling it was based on the reversal of affirmative action at the Supreme Court level. I believe it happened in 2023. So it impacted colleges and universities, set-asides for those that have great grades, that are Black, that want to become a doctor. It has impacted us. When Donald Trump reversed the 1965 executive order, he mentioned that in fact, it's now illegal. Not because he signed that, but what happened at the Supreme Court level due to affirmative action. Because again, that particular argument was based on a Civil Rights Act under the 14th Amendment there to protect us. So when you talk about, well, this amendment for birthright was intended for us, you better think again. You better think again, because someone believes in the Trump camp believes they know so much about the Constitution and the 13th and 14th Amendment, which, by the way, if you're a Black American under the 13th Amendment, what they wrote about free and not so free enslaved people, or what they were basically saying is that if you go to prison, you don't have the same constitutional rights anymore. And that's why this becomes very important, because we already know there's a high, if African Americans or Black Americans only make up 13% of the population, but they make up, in terms of the prison population, over 40% at least inside the prison, yet they only make up 13% of the population. So you better think again. If you think FBA and ADOS that somehow this birthright under the 14th Amendment is a win for us, you better think again. They just recently used the 1868 Civil Rights Act that was intended for us when reversing affirmative action at Harvard University and the University of North Carolina for all colleges and university. And that's when later on, when Trump won and came in the office in January of 2025, he stated that these are illegal. He's referencing that case before he rolled back Lyndon B. Johnson's 1965 executive order. So you better think again. If they've already reached back just 2 years ago and used the 14th Amendment or use a Civil Rights Act of 1868 intended for the free enslaved, that they somehow wouldn't use this birthright if they win in court once it's final said and done. Because now all they can do is continue to proceed in deporting people all over Africa that ain't even born there, and don't have an origin from there, are not from there. If you think they won't use it against you when they've already done it with the Civil Rights Act in order to reverse affirmative action, the Civil Rights Act, let me say it again for the people in the back because you got to hear me now. The Civil Rights Act of 1868 they used against us when it was intended for us. You got another thing coming, baby. You got another thing coming.